Have you ever felt like you're trapped in a never-ending storm? A whirlwind of chaos, negativity and outrage, news designed to provoke you, social media feeding your worst impulses, people constantly arguing over things they can't control. The world today seems more chaotic than ever. Political turmoil, misinformation, economic uncertainty. Everywhere you look, it's a battlefield for your attention and your emotions. But here's the shocking truth. It's not the world that's insane. It's that you are letting yourself be consumed by it. 2,000 years ago, the Stoics faced pandemics, wars, tyranny, and betrayal. Yet they remained unshaken, unbreakable, unmovable. They understood a truth that modern society has forgotten. Sanity isn't about fixing the world, it's about mastering yourself. And today, I'm going to show you how. Not through abstract philosophy, but through a 7-day challenge that will fundamentally change the way you think, react, and exist in this chaotic world. If you've ever felt overwhelmed, exhausted, or powerless, get ready, because by the end of this journey, you won't just survive the madness, you'll rise above it. Are you ready to reclaim your mind? Let's begin. Step 1. Realizing you've lost control. You wake up. Before your feet even touch the floor, you reach for your phone. The screen lights up, a barrage of notifications, urgent headlines, unread messages. A politician says something outrageous. A celebrity scandal is trending. People are fighting online, dividing themselves into tribes of anger and self-righteousness. Somewhere, something terrible has happened, and now you are supposed to feel outraged, anxious, hopeless, and before you even get out of bed, your day is already hijacked. Does this sound familiar? Because this is not an accident. This is exactly how modern life is designed, to steal your attention, to manipulate your emotions, to make you react instead of think. And the worst part, you don't even realize it's happening. Most people live on autopilot, constantly bombarded with external noise, never questioning why they feel exhausted, angry, anxious, and restless. They assume this is normal, but it's not. This is a trap, a carefully constructed environment that keeps you mentally enslaved to forces that thrive on your emotional instability. Think about the last time you truly chose how you felt, not just reacting to a situation, but consciously deciding how to perceive it. If you're like most people, you don't even remember the last time this happened. That's because modern society is built to keep you distracted and emotionally dependent. News cycles don't inform you, they control you. Social media doesn't connect you, it programs you. The more emotionally reactive you are, the easier you are to manipulate. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic thinkers, ruled an empire during times of war, plagues, and political betrayals. Yet he never allowed the chaos of the world to dictate his inner state. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is the core principle of Stoicism. Your greatest power is not in changing the world, but in mastering your own perception of it. But before you can reclaim that power, you must first wake up to the fact that you have lost it. Let's go deeper. When was the last time you got truly upset? Was it because of something that happened directly to you, or was it something you read, heard, or saw online? Did you choose to feel that way, or did it happen automatically? Here's the harsh truth. Most of what stresses you has nothing to do with you. The latest controversy, the latest outrage, the latest reason to be offended. It's all just bait designed to trigger an emotional response, to keep you in a cycle of reaction instead of action. You weren't born this way. As a child, you lived in the present moment, unburdened by the chaos of the world. But over time, society trained you to care about things you can't control, to become emotionally attached to distant events, to define your identity based on external forces. And the result? You live in a constant state of mental exhaustion, reacting to everything but controlling nothing. This is the root cause of why so many people feel lost, anxious, and powerless. They don't own their thoughts own them. But now that you see the problem, it's time to break free. Here's where things change. You can't fix what you don't understand, so the first step to reclaiming your sanity is to map out exactly what is controlling you. Today, you are going to observe your mind like a scientist observing a test subject. For one full day, pay attention to everything that triggers an emotional reaction in you. What news headlines make you feel anxious or angry? Which social media posts cause frustration or jealousy? What conversations leave you irritated, stressed, or overwhelmed? Write everything down. Every moment of frustration, every spike of anxiety, every small irritation. Capture it. At the end of the day, review your notes and categorize them into 2 columns: things I can control, things I cannot control. Most people will be shocked to realize that 90% of their emotional turmoil comes from things that they cannot control: other people's opinions, world events, random online drama, market crashes, political debates. And yet, they have been spending all their mental energy on them. This is the moment of awakening. When you see how much energy you've wasted on things outside of your control, you begin to understand just how much power you've been giving away. This simple exercise forces you to confront an uncomfortable truth. Your suffering is self-inflicted, not because you seek it out, but because you have never questioned whether it was necessary. The good news? You can stop it. Once you clearly identify what is outside of your control, you can begin the process of letting it go. You can stop chasing the illusion that controlling external events will bring you peace. Peace doesn't come from the world bending to your will. It comes from you bending your mind to reality. By the time you finish this exercise, something inside you shifts. You no longer feel like a victim of external chaos. You start to feel a sense of ownership over your emotions. You see the truth that few ever realize. Your reactions are a choice. And if they are a choice, you can choose differently. You can start seeing the world for what it is, not a force to be controlled, but a force to be navigated. Instead of getting pulled into meaningless battles, you can learn to step back, observe, and remain steady. And this is only the first step. Understanding this concept intellectually is not enough. You must practice it. Repetition is the key to rewiring your brain. Over the next 7 days, you will take control of your mind, step by step. This first exercise, mapping your triggers, is just the beginning. Tomorrow, you will learn how to separate yourself from your emotions and develop the ability to stay calm under pressure. This is the skill that made the Stoics unbreakable, and soon it will become your superpower. Are you ready to continue? Because this journey has only just begun. Step 2. Mastering your mind. You are not your emotions. You wake up feeling great, determined to have a productive day. But then it happens. A message from a coworker sets you off. Someone cuts you off in traffic. A news headline flashes across your screen designed to make you angry. Before you even have a chance to think, the emotions hit you like a tidal wave. Frustration, anger, anxiety. You tell yourself that it's justified, that anyone would feel the same way. But here's the truth. None of these things forced you to feel anything. You let them. This is the hard reality that most people never confront. The world doesn't make you angry, anxious, or upset. You do. Something happens, and your mind assigns it meaning. Your emotions follow, pulling you into a reactive spiral, and just like that, You've handed over control of your mind. But it doesn't have to be this way, because once you understand the nature of your emotions, you can stop being a slave to them. Marcus Aurelius understood this when he wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." In other words, it's not the event, it's your perception of the event. The person who insults you doesn't make you angry. You allow yourself to be angered. The traffic jam doesn't cause your frustration. You choose to perceive it as a problem. The bad news doesn't ruin your day. You decide to let it. Imagine carrying a bucket filled to the brim with water, representing your emotions. Every little bump, every little shake causes the water to spill. Now, imagine walking with a nearly empty bucket. No matter how rough the path, nothing spills. This is the difference between a reactive mind and a trained mind. Most people walk through life with an overflowing bucket, constantly spilling emotions at the slightest disturbance. A Stoic, however, learns to carry their bucket lightly, unaffected by the bumps along the way. So how do you begin to master this? It starts with one simple practice. When you feel an emotion rising, whether it's frustration, anger, or anxiety, stop for just 3 seconds and ask yourself, will this matter in 5 years? Pause. Let the question settle. If the answer is no, let it go. Take a deep breath and move on. This momentary pause is the gap between impulse and reaction, the space where true control is found. Most people don't realize that emotions are fleeting, like passing clouds. But when you don't take that pause, you become fused with the emotion, as if it defines you. You are not your anger. You are not your frustration. These are just temporary states of mind, not permanent parts of who you are. But if you don't step back and recognize this, you will always be at their mercy. Picture a river. If you jump into it, you will be carried away by the current, tossed around, helpless. But if you stand on the bank and observe, you see the water flowing past you. Your emotions work the same way. Most people are thrown into the river, consumed by every wave of feeling that comes their way. But a Stoic learns to stand on the bank and observe the emotions without being swept away. This is not suppression. Stoicism is not about denying emotions. It is about recognizing them for what they are: temporary, subjective, and ultimately within your control. You feel the initial spark of anger, but instead of feeding it with stories about how unfair something is, you step back and let it pass. You feel the rise of anxiety, but instead of spiraling into worst-case scenarios, you observe it, detach from it, and let it go. Some will argue that emotions are natural, that they are beyond control. And that is true, up to a point. The first spark of emotion is often involuntary. The moment someone insults you, you may feel a twinge of irritation. The moment you receive bad news, you may feel a pang of worry. But what happens next is entirely up to you. Do you feed that emotion? Do you build it into a wildfire? Or do you recognize it for what it is and let it burn out before it spreads? The problem is, most people react on autopilot. Something angers them, and they immediately lash out. Something frustrates them, and they dwell on it for hours. They are stuck in the illusion that emotions happen to them, when in reality they are the ones keeping the emotions alive. By practicing the 3-second pause, by questioning whether something truly matters, you begin to weaken this illusion. You reclaim your ability to respond rather than react. And over time, this practice rewires your mind. Instead of being controlled by every emotional wave, you learn to remain steady, unshaken, composed. This is how the great Stoics maintained their power in the face of adversity. Epictetus, who was born a slave and endured immense cruelty, refused to let his circumstances dictate his peace of mind. Seneca, who faced exile and betrayal, did not waste energy resenting his fate. Marcus Aurelius, who carried the weight of an empire, did not allow his emotions to control him. They all understood a fundamental truth. Peace is not found in changing the world, but in changing how you perceive it. Most people think strength is about dominance, about forcing the world to bend to your will. But true strength is internal. It is the ability to remain steady in the face of chaos, to hold your mind still while the world moves around you. This is what it means to master your emotions. But like any skill, it takes practice. For the next 24 hours, commit to one simple action. Every time you feel an emotional reaction rising, pause. Take 3 seconds and ask yourself, will this matter in 5 years? If not, let it go. Breathe in deeply and move forward. At first, it will be difficult. Your mind will resist. It wants to hold on to anger, to dwell in frustration, to seek validation through emotional outbursts. But as you continue this practice, something shifts. The emotions that once consumed you start to lose their power. You feel the same triggers, but instead of reacting, you observe. Instead of being a prisoner to your emotions, you become their master. And once you have mastered this, you will understand something most people never do. True power is not about controlling the world. It is about controlling yourself. Now that you've taken the second step, the path forward becomes even clearer. Tomorrow, you will learn how to strengthen this control even further by mastering your perception. If today's lesson was about stepping back from emotions, the next lesson will show you how to reshape reality itself. Because once you control how you see the world, you control everything. Are you ready to take the next step? Because this is just the beginning. Step 3. Patience in adversity, shifting your perspective. You wake up feeling ready for the day, but then something goes wrong. Maybe it's something small, a traffic jam making you late, a rude comment from a coworker, a last-minute change in plans. Or maybe it's something bigger, a setback in your career, a betrayal from someone you trusted, an unexpected crisis that throws your entire life into chaos. Your immediate instinct is frustration. You feel the resistance rising in your chest, the tightening of your mind as it begins to spiral into anger, anxiety, or disappointment. But then something stops you. A single thought cuts through the noise. Is this truly a problem, or is it just my perception of it? Most people assume that suffering is caused by external events. They believe that bad things happen, and as a result, they feel bad. But this is an illusion. What actually happens is this. An event occurs, your mind assigns meaning to it, and that meaning determines how you feel. It's not the traffic that makes you mad, it's your belief that traffic is a waste of time. It's not criticism that makes you feel hurt. It's your interpretation that criticism is an attack on your worth. It's not failure that devastates you. It's your belief that failure is final. Marcus Aurelius understood this when he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He lived through wars, plagues, betrayals, and immense personal loss, yet he remained steady. He knew that hardship was inevitable, but suffering was optional, because suffering is not what happens to you, it is how you choose to see what happens to you. Imagine two people stuck in traffic. The first clenches the steering wheel, fuming with frustration, feeling their blood pressure rise with every passing second. They tell themselves a story. This is unfair. People are terrible drivers. My whole day is ruined. The second person, sitting in the exact same traffic, takes a deep breath and puts on an audiobook they've been meaning to listen to. They tell themselves a different story. This is extra time for me. I can't control the traffic, but I can control how I use this moment. The situation is identical, but the experience is completely different. Now, apply this to the rest of life. The way you frame an event determines whether it weakens you or strengthens you. You can see obstacles as barriers, or you can see them as teachers. You can see failures as humiliating defeats, or you can see them as stepping stones. You can see criticism as an attack, or you can see it as feedback for growth. The obstacle is never the real problem, your perception of it is. This is not just philosophy, it is a skill that can be practiced. Every time you encounter a frustrating situation, ask yourself, is there a way to turn this into an opportunity? Instead of resisting reality, can you use it? A delayed flight is time to reflect, read, or rest. Harsh feedback is a chance to refine your skills. A failed project is proof of lessons learned that will make your next attempt stronger. The moment you train yourself to look for opportunities instead of problems, your entire reality shifts. There is a well-known Stoic phrase, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This means that whatever you see as an obstacle is actually the path forward. It is not something blocking your progress. It is your progress. If life were easy, you would never grow. If things always went your way, you would never develop resilience. If you never faced hardship, you would never learn patience, wisdom, or strength. Consider the lives of history's greatest minds. Thomas Edison failed thousands of times before inventing the light bulb. Nelson Mandela spent decades in prison before emerging as a leader. Seneca was exiled and lost everything, yet used that time to write his most profound works. In every case, what seemed like a setback was actually a transformation. They did not resist their circumstances, they used them. This is the mindset shift that changes everything. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "How can I use this?" Instead of seeing difficulties as punishments, see them as raw material. Instead of waiting for life to be easy, learn to thrive in difficulty. The world does not bend to your will, but you can bend your mind to meet the world. This kind of thinking does not come naturally. Your first instinct will always be to resist, to fight against discomfort, to wish things were different. But with practice, you can rewire your brain. For the next 24 hours, challenge yourself to shift your perspective on every obstacle you face. When something doesn't go your way, pause and ask, "Is this an opportunity in disguise? What can I learn from this? How can I make this work for me?" At first it will feel strange. Your mind will resist. But then something will happen. You will feel lighter. The same events that once made you angry or discouraged will start to feel different. You will see them as part of the process, not interruptions. You will stop wasting energy fighting what you cannot change and start using that energy to shape what you can. And then, one day, something big will happen. A major setback. A real crisis. Something that, in the past, would have completely unraveled you. But instead of panicking, instead of breaking down, you will pause. You will remember what you have practiced. You will look at the situation, and instead of asking, "Why me?" you will ask, "What now?" And in that moment, you will realize that you have changed. You will realize that no matter what happens, you can remain steady. You will realize that you are no longer at the mercy of life. You are in control of yourself. And that is when you will truly understand the power of Stoicism. Now that you've started to shift your perception, the next step is even deeper. If you can control how you frame reality, what happens when you begin controlling your expectations? Because next, you will learn the art of letting go of what you think should happen and embracing what actually is. And that is where true peace begins. Are you ready to take the next step? Step 4. Don't let social media control you. You wake up and instinctively reach for your phone. Before your feet even touch the ground, you've already scrolled through a flood of updates, some bad, some infuriating, some trivial. A breaking news headline warns of yet another crisis. A social media post sparks an argument in the comments. A photo of an acquaintance living their best life makes you feel like you're somehow falling behind. Before the day has even begun, your emotions are already hijacked. Most people don't realize this is happening. They assume they are making a conscious choice when they check the news or scroll through social media. But in reality, they are reacting, not deciding. They open an app to just check something, and an hour disappears. They tell themselves they are staying informed, but what they are really doing is outsourcing their emotional state to an algorithm designed to keep them addicted. The world has always been chaotic. There have always been wars, scandals, tragedies, and conflicts. But never before have you had instant access to every bad thing happening on the planet, 24 hours a day. Never before have you been expected to have an opinion on every issue, to respond to every controversy, to carry the weight of global suffering in your mind at all times. Humans were not designed to process this much information, and yet most people willingly drown themselves in it, day after day, without ever questioning what it's doing to them. Marcus Aurelius never had to deal with social media, but he understood the danger of letting external forces control your mind. He wrote, "You always have the power of not having an opinion. Things themselves have no power over us. It is our judgments that disturb us. Imagine how different your life would be if you stopped reacting to every piece of information thrown at you, if you stopped letting the digital world dictate how you feel. Right now, you probably believe that you control your mind. But let's test that belief. Can you go 24 hours without social media, without checking the news, without letting an algorithm decide what you should think about today? Most people can't, not because they don't want to, but because they are addicted. They don't realize how deeply conditioned they have become to seek out external stimulation, how uncomfortable they feel when they are alone with their own thoughts. The only way to break free from this is to create space. Today, you are going to take back control. For the next 24 hours, avoid news and social media completely. No scrolling, no checking, no letting the world dictate your emotions. Instead, replace that time with something that actually strengthens your mind. Read a book, meditate, write in a journal, go for a walk and observe the world around you. Pay attention to how you feel. At first, you might experience withdrawal. You will feel the itch to check, the urge to see what's happening. But then something will shift. The longer you go without external noise, the clearer your mind becomes. You start to realize how much of your energy has been wasted on things that don't matter. Without the constant flood of information, you will notice something surprising. You feel calmer. You aren't as agitated, as anxious, as emotionally drained. The problems that seemed so urgent yesterday now feel distant, unimportant. You begin to experience the world directly, instead of through a screen. You notice the sound of the wind, the texture of a book's pages, the way your thoughts unfold when they aren't being interrupted. And in that stillness, you find something most people never experience: mental freedom. Now imagine extending this practice beyond a single day. Imagine curating your mental environment as carefully as you curate your home. Just as you wouldn't fill your living space with garbage, why would you fill your mind with useless noise? You don't have to cut yourself off from the world entirely, but you must learn to filter what enters your mind. You decide what deserves your attention rather than letting an algorithm decide for you. The greatest thinkers in history cultivated this kind of discipline. Seneca warned about the dangers of consuming too much unnecessary information, reminding us that our minds become what we feed them. The Stoics understood that true strength comes not from knowing everything, but from knowing what to ignore. They practiced deliberate focus, choosing what deserved their energy and what did not. The modern world is built to keep you distracted, to keep you emotionally engaged in things that have nothing to do with your real life. But you have a choice. You can take back your mind, and it starts with something as simple as stepping away. The challenge is set. For 24 hours, step back. No social media, no news, no mindless scrolling. Observe how it feels. And when the day is over, ask yourself a question. Do I really want to go back to letting the world control my emotions? Or do I want to keep this freedom? Now that you have taken this step, the next challenge will be even more powerful. You will learn to fully embrace the present moment, to detach from past regrets and future anxieties, and to experience life as it truly is. Because once you master this, nothing can shake you. Are you ready? Step 5. Memento mori. Remember you will die, so live fully. One day, you will take your last breath. One day, you will close your eyes and never open them again. Everything you worry about, your unread emails, the opinions of strangers, the temporary struggles of life, will cease to matter. The world will move on without you. The question is, when that day comes, will you have truly lived? Most people move through life as if they are immortal, as if time is an infinite resource that will always be available to them. They postpone their dreams, delay their happiness, assume that someday will come when things are more convenient, when they have more money, when circumstances align perfectly. But someday is a dangerous illusion, because one day, without warning, your time will run out, and there will be no more chances. The Stoics understood this with absolute clarity. They lived by a simple but profound principle, memento mori. Remember that you will die, not as a morbid thought, but as a call to wake up. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that he was a dying man walking. Seneca wrote that we must not think of death as something that lies ahead of us, but as something that is happening right now, with every passing second. The clock is always ticking. The only question is whether you are paying attention. Right now, pause for a moment. Imagine if today was your last day. If you knew with certainty that you would not wake up tomorrow, how would you live the next 24 hours? Would you still waste time scrolling through meaningless distractions? Would you still hold on to grudges, feeding anger that serves no purpose? Would you still postpone telling the people you love how much they mean to you? Most people avoid thinking about death because it scares them, but fear is not the purpose of memento mori. The purpose is urgency, the purpose is clarity. When you remember that your time is limited, you stop wasting it. You stop putting off what matters. You start living with intention, with presence, with the understanding that every single moment is a gift. Take a look at your life. Are you truly spending your time in a way that reflects what you value? Are you giving attention to things that actually matter, or are you drowning in trivial distractions? Imagine if you could see your life from your deathbed. What would you regret? What would you wish you had done sooner? The brutal truth is, if something truly matters, you would not be waiting. If it is important, you would act now. So today, you will do something most people never dare to do. You will write yourself a letter, as if today were your last day. Sit down with a pen and ask yourself, what would I say to myself if I knew I wouldn't be here tomorrow? What advice would I leave for my own life? What unfinished business would I regret never taking care of? What truths would I finally admit to myself? Do not hold back. Be brutally honest. This letter is not for anyone else. It is for you. When you finish, read it carefully. What stands out? What keeps coming up? Whatever those things are, they are what truly matter to you. And if they matter, why are they not your priority? Most people live as if they have forever, but the reality is you don't. Every moment wasted is a moment you will never get back. Every word left unsaid is a missed opportunity that will never return. Every fear that stops you from doing what you love is a chain that only you have the power to break. You don't need to wait for a near-death experience to wake up. You don't need to suffer a loss to suddenly appreciate life. You can choose right now to live as if time is precious, because it is. Every conversation could be your last. Every sunrise could be the final one you see. This is not a reason to live in fear. It is a reason to live with gratitude, to show up fully, to stop waiting for permission to chase the things that set your soul on fire. Most people assume death is the enemy, but what if it is actually the greatest teacher? What if, instead of something to dread, it is something that gives life meaning? If you knew you had infinite time, would you still care so deeply about the things that make life beautiful? The laughter, the love, the small moments that you treasure. It is precisely because life is temporary that it is precious. If you truly embrace memento mori, you will stop asking, "How much time do I have left?" and start asking, "What will I do with the time I have?" You will stop saying, "I will be happy when," and start finding happiness in the present. You will stop waiting for life to begin and realize that life is already happening right now. So as today ends, read your letter one more time. Ask yourself what needs to change, and then make the change, because someday will not come, but today is here. Now that you have embraced the truth of your mortality, the next lesson will take you even deeper. You will learn how to stop fighting fate, how to stop resisting the things you cannot control, and how to love whatever life gives you. Because once you stop seeing obstacles as enemies and start seeing them as part of your path, nothing will ever be able to break you. Are you ready for that? Step 6. Accepting fate, amor fati. Life will not always go your way. No matter how much you plan, how careful you are, how much effort you put in, things will happen that you did not expect and did not want. You will lose things. People will disappoint you. Circumstances will change in ways you cannot control. And in those moments, you have two choices. You can resist, complain, fight against reality, wasting energy on wishing things were different. Or you can say, good. Most people spend their lives resisting fate. When something goes wrong, their first instinct is frustration. They ask, why me? Why now? Why this? They cling to the illusion that life should unfold according to their expectations, that they deserve a reality free of obstacles. But reality does not care about expectations. The Stoics understood this deeply, and instead of resisting, they embraced a radical mindset. Amor fati, love of fate, not just accepting what happens, but embracing it fully. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." This is the essence of amor fati. Instead of seeing obstacles as setbacks, see them as fuel. Instead of wishing things were different, find a way to use what is. If you lose a job, see it as an opportunity to learn something new, to explore a different path. If someone betrays you, take it as a lesson in wisdom and discernment. If plans fall apart, recognize that perhaps something better is waiting. It sounds simple, but it is one of the hardest things to practice. The mind clings to what it wants. It resists uncertainty, change, discomfort. But what if you trained yourself to respond differently? What if, instead of frustration, your instinct was curiosity? What if, instead of anger, you felt gratitude for the challenge? The key to this shift is a single phrase. When something unexpected happens, say, good. You get rejected? Good. Now you know where you need to improve. You fail at something? Good. That means you're learning. A plan collapses? Good. Now you are forced to adapt, to be creative, to grow. By repeating this response, you begin rewiring your mind. Instead of reacting emotionally, you begin looking for opportunities. You stop being a victim of circumstances and start using them. This is what made the Stoics unbreakable. They did not just endure suffering, they transformed it. Seneca was exiled and lost everything: his power, his status, his wealth. But instead of falling into despair, he used that time to write some of his greatest philosophical works. Epictetus was born a slave, subjected to cruelty and hardship, yet he became one of the most respected teachers of all time. Marcus Aurelius faced plagues, wars, betrayals, but he remained steady, turning every hardship into wisdom. Their secret: they did not fight against fate, they loved it. This is not passivity. Amor fati does not mean surrendering to life without effort. It means fully engaging with life as it is, rather than wasting time wishing it were different. It means seeing every obstacle as an assignment, every difficulty as training. It means understanding that you were not promised an easy life, but you have been given a powerful mind, capable of navigating anything. For the next 24 hours, practice this mindset. When something inconvenient or frustrating happens, pause and say, "Good." Instead of reacting emotionally, train yourself to see how this moment can serve you. It will feel unnatural at first. Your mind will want to resist. But over time, this practice will change the way you see everything. You will stop wasting energy on things you cannot change, and instead, you will channel that energy into what you can control: your response, your growth, your actions. Most people fight the current of life, exhausting themselves in the process. But the Stoics knew better. They knew that life, like a river, is always moving, always changing. You can either resist it, struggling against the inevitable, or you can learn to move with it, to use its power, to trust its direction. Once you stop fighting fate, you become unstoppable. Now that you have begun to master acceptance, the next step is even more powerful. You will learn how to control not just how you react to fate, but how you shape the way you experience reality itself. Because perception is not just something that happens to you, it is something you can take full command of. Are you ready to take that next step? Step 7. Becoming a true Stoic. Most people complain. They complain about the weather, their job, their relationships, the economy, the world. They spend hours talking about what's wrong, about what should be different, about how unfair life is. But what does complaining change? Nothing. It is a powerless act, a surrender disguised as expression. The Stoics knew this, and that is why they refused to waste energy on complaints. Instead, they acted. The world today is filled with outrage, but outrage does not build anything. It does not solve problems, it does not make you stronger, and it does not bring you peace. The only thing that does is action. A Stoic understands that they have control over two things: their thoughts and their actions. Everything else is noise. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." This is the final step in your journey. You have trained yourself to master your emotions, to reframe adversity, to embrace fate. Now, it is time to act. Because a Stoic is not someone who simply thinks differently, it is someone who lives differently. Look at your life. Look at the world around you. Where can you make an impact? Instead of complaining about problems, how can you contribute to a solution? Instead of waiting for others to act with virtue, how can you embody it yourself? For the next 24 hours, do something that reflects the Stoic mindset. Help someone without expecting recognition. Show patience when others lose their temper. Keep a promise, even when it's inconvenient. Push yourself to take action in a way that reflects who you want to be. This is what separates a Stoic from the average person. Most people live reactively. They do what feels good in the moment. They act based on emotion rather than principle. They let circumstances dictate their behavior. But a Stoic does not wait for the right mood or the perfect conditions. A Stoic simply does what needs to be done. Imagine a world where everyone followed this philosophy, where people took responsibility for their actions instead of blaming others, where they worked to improve their communities instead of complaining about them, where they helped others because it was right, not because they wanted praise. That world will never exist for everyone, but it can exist for you. At some point, every person must decide who they are going to be. Will you be the kind of person who reacts, who complains, who blames? Or will you be the kind of person who acts, who builds, who stays steady no matter what happens? The choice is always yours. You have spent the past 7 days training your mind, shifting your perspective, and strengthening your discipline. And now you see the truth. The world has not changed. The chaos is still there. The noise, the distractions, the difficulties, they all remain. But you have changed. You no longer let the world dictate your peace. You no longer surrender your emotions to things outside your control. You no longer fight against fate, but move with it. You have learned to step back, to observe, to respond with clarity rather than impulse. You have stopped waiting for life to be easy, and instead, you have trained yourself to be stronger. This is what it means to be a Stoic. It is not just about reading philosophy. It is not about quoting Marcus Aurelius or discussing the ideas of Epictetus. It is about living these principles every day. It is about being the person who remains calm in a storm, who leads by example, who does what is right even when no one is watching. The world will continue to test you. You will face setbacks, disappointments, and hardships. People will be unfair. Things will not always go the way you want. But you are prepared, because you now understand that true power does not come from controlling the world. It comes from mastering yourself. From this moment forward, carry this mindset with you. When challenges arise, meet them with patience. When emotions flare, step back and regain control. When adversity comes, use it as fuel, and above all, act. Because a Stoic does not complain. A Stoic does not hesitate. A Stoic does not wait for the world to change. A Stoic lives the change. You are no longer just someone who admires Stoicism. You are someone who embodies it. The world is still chaotic. The distractions, the noise, the frustrations, they have not disappeared. But now, you know something most people don't. You know that sanity in an insane world is not about changing the world, it's about changing yourself. You have seen that true strength does not come from controlling everything around you, but from mastering your own mind. And that is exactly what the Stoics taught us. For the past 7 days, you have learned how to take back control. You have discovered that your emotions are a choice, that your perspective shapes your reality, that every obstacle is an opportunity. You have practiced patience, discipline, and resilience, but knowledge is useless without action. The real test begins now. So here's the challenge. Which lesson will you start with first? Will you take a day away from social media and experience clarity for the first time in years? Will you reframe your next setback as an opportunity for growth? Will you stop complaining and start acting? Choose one. Put it into practice today, because Stoicism is not something you read, it is something you live. Now, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below. Which part of this challenge resonated with you the most? Which step will you start with today? Your experience could inspire someone else on this journey. If you found value in this, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Send this to a friend who needs it. Like the video so more people can see it. And if you want to keep learning how to master your mind and thrive in the chaos, make sure to subscribe. The world will always be unpredictable. But you have a choice. Will you let the world control you, or will you rise above it? As Marcus Aurelius once asked, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. So which path will you choose?